Welcome to Soccer Morning on NASN. Here's your host, Jason Davis.
Good morning, everybody. Happy Tuesday. Jason Davis here with you on Soccer Morning. The North American Soccer Network. NASN.TV is where you can find us every day of the week. Every day of the week, Monday through Friday, 10 o'clock Eastern, 10 o'clock a.m. Eastern, till 11:30 a.m. Eastern. It's a 90-minute show. Why did we pick 90 minutes? I don't. That was like a random choice? We just decided on a 90-minute show. Yeah, you guys, if you guys had any idea. Here we go. It is a big edition of the show. We got Champions League today, a couple of games. Manchester United traveling to Greece to play Olympiacos, and Dortmund in Russia to face Zenit St. Petersburg. I said that weird, but Zenit St. Petersburg is the team that Dortmund is playing. Big games today. We're going to talk to Brian Sciaretta from Yanks Abroad and American Soccer Now and the New York Times. We'll talk to him on a host of Americans playing abroad and doing things abroad topics, not just playing. I definitely want to mention Thomas Dooley. He's got a very good interview with Thomas Dooley, who was just named the head coach of the Philippines national team. Now, you think, okay, the Philippines, not a really good soccer country. I think they're ranked past 100 somewhere. We don't really pay attention much to those countries that are ranked past 100. But I would think that the Philippines have potential. So we'll talk to Brian about what he got out of Thomas Dooley, who at one point seemed to be a candidate for an MLS job. I'm not sure whether he was passed over, whether he wasn't interested, where he fell. He was coaching with U.S. Soccer. Obviously, you know him as a U.S. Soccer great, a U.S. men's national team player, German-American. He was that guy. He was the first one. He was the first German-American player before Jermaine Jones, before Fabian Johnson, before Julian Green, before all of these guys. Terrence Boyd, before all of them. It was Thomas Dooley. Also on this show, David Cartlidge will join us the bottom of the hour at 11 o'clock, so roughly 60 minutes from now. A little bit less than that. And we'll talk to him about Spain because it's fascinating in Spain. Not only is there league to talk about, Atletico Madrid dropping a 3-0 score to Real Sociedad on the weekend. Real Madrid back top of the table. Gareth Bale with the rocket. I mentioned that yesterday, I think. Barcelona doing their thing. Barcelona, did they prove something against City? Is that how we're looking at this now? People were underrating How is it possible to underrate Barcelona? Yes, are they as good as they used to be under Pep Guardiola? Probably not. They've taken a couple steps back, but come on. It's still Barcelona. And I know City has been on the come up, and they played very well, and they score a lot of goals. But that's nothing really surprising about what happened. Of course, red cards help. Going down 10 men doesn't help Manchester City. Our phone lines are open, 347-756-6276. You save that number, and you use it when we are not talking to a guest. Like right now, for the next 25 minutes, we'll be here without a guest until Brian Sciaretta joins us. So give me a call if you have anything on your mind. Certainly take those. We are at Soccer Morning on Twitter. Lots of people with thoughts today on topics to discuss on this show, and we'll try to get to all of them. I should mention the U.S. Soccer Hall of Fame inductees were announced. Christine Lilly, Brian McBride, and Bob Bradley. All very deserving. I'd like to take some time maybe later in the show, do a little profile on each of those individuals. Again, these are Pantheon people. That's why you're in the Hall of Fame. You have made a significant, worthwhile, long-lasting, recognizable contribution to the sport of soccer in the United States, and all three of them very worthy of that honor. All right. So we turn to a topic we've been on top of on this show for quite some time now. It's the state of things in Brazil as we head to a World Cup this summer. It's coming. It's 4 months away. I saw a picture today of a FIFA-mandated training ground that is supposed to be ready for the World Cup that basically looks like a mud hole. They've got 4 months to put this together. They said it'll get done. Okay. Some of Twitter yesterday was getting a little excited over Tim Cahill, tweeting pictures, talking about arriving in Brazil. Where did he arrive? I need to get the name of that city. We've had the stadium delays. We know that there have been deaths. Now, let's put all of this in the proper context, okay? Construction deaths happen. They are an unfortunate part of building massive structures like stadiums, like skyscrapers. They happen. They happen in this country. People die on construction sites in this country. Accidents happen. I'm not saying that forgives anything on the part of the Brazilian authorities, the people in charge of building these stadiums. I'm simply saying, let's not cast stones unless we completely understand what's going on there. But there are other concerns. We know that the people of Brazil are not happy in general, that a large portion of them anyway are likely to protest, are likely to demonstrate, are likely to hit the streets when the world comes to Brazil for the World Cup. They did it during the Confederations Cup, and it's like Diet World Cup. Is it even fair to say? It's like 10-calorie World Cup. It's like it's like drinking Miller High Life when you could have, give me a really good beer. Trevor's the beer guy. Give me a really good, nice, full-bodied beer I can reference for this analogy. So that was nothing. Confederations Cup was heady topper, I'm being told. All right, so the Confederations Cup was nothing. It was a practice run with a tiny amount of teams compared to the World Cup, with many fewer cities, with many less stadiums and less locales and less people who could make an impact by showing up in the streets and protesting not just what the Brazilian government has done and messed up and is doing wrong by the people in a populist way, but also specifically how the World Cup has impacted Brazil. And to that point, I saw today a poll of the people of Brazil. Do you want the World Cup in Brazil? Now, I think the baseline expectation, let's pretend everything was fine in Brazil. Let's pretend that there weren't uprisings, that people weren't upset, that there wasn't a concern over where the money from the World Cup was going, that these stadiums were getting built on time, that everything was running smoothly. Let's pretend it's a perfect world in Brazil. What would you peg that number at for that poll that says, do you want the World Cup in Brazil? Do you favor hosting the World Cup here? 75, 85, 90% of the people of Brazil? That seems about right to me. At least 75%. And probably much higher. And in fact, as of 2008, this poll was taken. Do you favor the World Cup in Brazil? 79% of Brazilians said, yeah, hey, of course, come on. We're the home of football. This is our game. We've got to avenge 1950. Bring us the World Cup. We're ready. 79% in November 2008. And this is one of the more football, soccer-loving countries in the world. If you're making the list, who loves football the most by country? Brazil's in the top 3. And if you drop below 3, you're wrong. If you can make the easy argument that they're number 1. As of right now, poll by Datafolha showed only 52% of Brazilians favored hosting the World Cup. Right now, 52, 79%, 2008, 4.5 years later, 5.5 years later, 52%. Now, I don't know that this means anything. Probably doesn't. Here's the thing about these big events. The money being poured into them, the international attention, the last-minute preparation. We just saw this in Sochi for the Winter Olympics. Last-minute preparations for those Sochi games made the rounds everywhere. Social media has turned, we haven't built the room yet for the journalists coming in, into big news. That's what Twitter does now. I'm a journalist. I write for a big newspaper, big outlet, ESPN, USA Today, whoever. I've got 500,000 followers based on my profile. I'm going to tweet a picture of the broken sink, of the door with no handle on it, whatever. That becomes big news. We're likely to see something similar in Brazil. I don't know if the journalists will have problems with their accommodations. Maybe, maybe not. But we'll see some problems. Oh, look, which I like with Tim Cahill arriving in Brazil. Here's the airport. Look at it. Oh, my God. It's substandard. Here, look at this thing that is not ready yet. Freak out, freak out, freak out. That was the Sochi Olympics 2 weeks ago when people arrived, 2.5 weeks ago, when the world gathered in Sochi. Are we talking about that stuff now? Is that still big news to anybody? We just went through 2 weeks of games. We watched the luge and the skeleton and ice hockey and skating and skiing. We watched all of that stuff. Some of us more than others. But we're not talking about it anymore. And that doesn't mean that it was a great Winter Olympics. It doesn't mean that everything was fine. But what it does mean is that the competition papers over a lot of the cracks. Actually competing in those sports makes it less likely we care that there wasn't a handle on the door for the journalist who arrived in Sochi 2 weeks ago. And I have a feeling it's going to be the same phenomenon in Brazil. It's going to be a matter of Brazil's not ready. This stadium has this thing left to be done. This airport is not ready for the traffic coming in. The transportation is not good enough. The infrastructure is bad. All of that stuff is going to be talked about in the build-up to the World Cup. It's being talked about now. Now you throw on top of all of that the protest. Maybe we've got a tipping point. Maybe we've got critical mass on something interesting. And I don't know if this is a cynical take or an optimistic take, but I think we'll be fine as remote viewers. People going, I think they'll be fine too. Because what do you do when you have a visitor? When you have somebody coming to your house? You put on your best face. You clean the damn thing up. You make it as nice as it possibly can in the last couple of minutes before they get there. You set out the tray of the good cheese. You get the bottle of wine that you wouldn't normally buy. Boom. They come in. Maybe it's a little shoddy. Maybe you got holes in the wall. Maybe you need a paint job. Maybe your toilet, they have to jiggle the handle to make it flush. Okay. It's still a fine place to come. It's the hospitality that matters, right? So that's what we'll see. Watch. That's what we'll see. And again, I'm not sure if that's me being cynical about the world, kind of missing out on all of the things that will be problems or sort of overlooking them eventually. I hope we don't overlook the protest. I hope we don't overlook the people of Brazil and their message. So I guess that's cynical, but it's also optimistic that we're going to have it's going to be a fine World Cup. It's going to be fun. It's going to be entertaining. Production values from the people that are broadcasting it for us will be fantastic. Of course they will. Roberto Martinez, is he in again? I'm down for that. Breaking news, I've just been told the U.S. men's national team game that was set for Kharkiv in Ukraine has been moved to Cyprus. So they are, I'm getting this as I speak, they're playing Ukraine in Cyprus. Is that what I'm being told here? All right, so that's a matter of obviously getting the game out of a country that is going through a lot right now. Does that change anything from the U.S. perspective? I don't know that it does. I mean, better not to have to wonder and worry about what might happen in Kharkiv, which apparently is where the president of Ukraine. I'm not on my politics, and I'm not really up on my uprising in Ukraine. I know that there is a Klitschko involved. I know that the president may or may not have run to Kharkiv. That's what I think I know. So it makes sense. And the smart thing to do for U.S. soccer was to always get this out of Ukraine, whether that meant canceling the game or moving it. Moving it's fine. If somehow, because I'm not concerned about the U.S. anymore. Do they need this game for the build-up to the World Cup? Sure. Of course they do. Need every chance you can get to put people on the field. But from a Ukrainian perspective, if somehow the national team playing this game helps the Ukrainian people, that's good. I don't think it will have a major impact. I think obviously we're well past solidarity through sport in that country. But it may have some effect. It may have some impact. It may give the country a chance to breathe for a second. We all know the famous example of the soccer war. Now, there's also examples on the other side of that of, soccer being a chance to stop, think about things for a minute, go watch, detach your mind from the horrors that are going on and the upheaval and the disgust with the government and all of that and sort of say, all right, look, wait, hold on a second. We're all Ukrainian here. Let's go watch our team play. In fact, should I root for the Ukrainians? Should I root for Ukraine to win that game? It's a friendly. I don't care about the result, to be honest with you. I do care about how the United States plays because I don't like watching a bad game from my team, but should be rooting for the Ukraine or Ukraine. I keep saying that. This is the report from Reuters. Ukraine's football friendly against the United States next month, scheduled to take place in Kharkiv, has been moved to Cyprus due to unstable political situation, Ukraine's Football Federation said on Tuesday. Football officials took into consideration the request of the U.S. for the game on March 5th to be played outside Ukraine. A statement on the Federation's official website said, scores of people were killed in anti-government protests last week, blah, blah, blah. Host city, I'm not making light of that. That's part we know. Host city and kickoff time. The rescheduled game will be decided later. So it's Cyprus. Don't know where in Cyprus. How many stadiums does Cyprus have? And who's going to show up? I guess it really doesn't matter. Get a stadium with enough room for 2,000 people. I don't think you're going to fill those seats up, are you? I don't think this game's going to be played in front of a raucous crowd. Now, that's the one thing the United States does lose out on. Because I think it's always worthwhile to play in front of a hostile environment. That's fun. I mean, that's part of getting your team together to do. Not that the U.S. will go to Brazil and play in front of raucous, hostile crowds. Most of the time, they're neutral crowds unless you're playing the home country. But it's a good test. And the United States has a poor record in Europe. Better since Klinsmann has come aboard, but a poor record in Europe. Every chance you get to add to success on that continent should be taken advantage of. So, but this is prudent. Get it out of Ukraine. Don't have to deal with all that security nonsense. If Cyprus is willing and able, and it makes sense for both parties, then that's a good thing. All right, I'm looking at Twitter here. Lots of talk. I'm not sure what this is. What's happening here? T.R. Clevenger goes something about the U.S. Or something about the size of MLS. We've talked about that before. I think the logical end, not that I'm advocating for this, the logical number for MLS to get to is 32. Believe it or not. I don't know that they get there. I don't know if there's enough candidates, but 32 can make sense. Gringo Mark, do you think there's more opposition to current German Americans because they are black versus Captain Dooley's time? Is there opposition to the German Americans? Is that a thing? If that's the case, I'm not aware of it. I'm not aware of anybody saying, hey, we shouldn't have these German Americans. And no, I don't think race is a factor here. And I don't know that, to be honest with you, it was a very different era that Thomas Dooley played in. Not nearly as much attention on that team as there is now. In fact, I imagine, through no fault of their own necessarily, that there was a large number of U.S. soccer fans, people who at least were aware of the team and maybe watched along the World Cups and the like, who weren't aware that Thomas Dooley was German. I mean, his name doesn't scream German, does it? And then maybe the case for Jermaine Jones and Fabian Johnson and Terrence Boyd. I don't know. But no, I don't think that has anything to do with it. Don't think that has anything to do with it. All right. In addition to getting ready for the World Cup, talking about Brazil, the number of Brazilian people who are actually happy to be hosting this tournament. We'll see if that number creeps down as the tournament gets closer. What kind of bubbling up we see among the populist movement in Brazil to go out and protest and and send a message during this tournament. We do have, just from a purely selfish point of view, we've got ESPN's schedule for the World Cup. And the thing that most people are taking away here, or the thing that is causing a little bit of consternation, is the fact that the U.S. men's national team will not appear on ABC, the flagship network of Disney, who owns ABC and ESPN. That seems odd. Why would you not put the home country on ABC, over-the-air television, in the World Cup? At least the three games that we know they're going to get. Seen a couple of theories, seen a couple of people talking about this. I'm not as concerned. I mean, as was said on Twitter here by Nathan, everybody gets ESPN. Not everybody. Some of you have cut the cord. Some of you have decided to go without cable. You're weird people, but do it. Go for it. Most of us have ESPN. Most of us will be fine watching these games on ESPN. I'm not going to take this as a slight necessarily. I think there are some other factors involved. In fact, there may be an issue with scheduling on those ABC stations and the local news. Local stations don't like to give up their blocks that are theirs, that they control. You see this every now and then, like when Fox puts a game over the air, like a Premier League game or a Champions League game. Not a Premier League game now, but a Champions League game. You get network stations. Sorry, you get member stations who decide that they're not going to show it. They're going to show a repeat of Billy Bob Goes Bass Fishing because they think that that's going to do them better. Soccer's not big here in Dubuque. Is that a place? We're going to show, I don't know. I don't want to stereotype what happens in Dubuque. But it happens. Every now and then. You'll see Deadspin, and you'll see the guys over there sort of identify which of these networks aren't going to show the game. Or aren't showing the game. And there's reports on Twitter. What's the guy's name that does the screen caps on Twitter? I mean, the screen caps and all the video and stuff on Deadspin. I'm blanking, sorry. He's the one that usually kind of collects this information. So, look, in that regard, when those local stations decide we want to hold on to our local news, would you rather have the chance of those games being not being there because they're being preempted by something that the local station decided is more important, or would you rather have it on ESPN? As Nathan said, the production is going to be the same. The presentation will be the same. But there you go. 5:30 on June 16th against Ghana on ESPN. 5:30 on June 22nd against Portugal. And Thursday, June 26th at 11:30 a.m. against Germany. There's your U.S. men's national team schedule. So, and look, if you think, well, ESPN, Disney, ABC, it's all the same company. Why don't they just put their foot down and make these local affiliates do this? It's not always that simple. And clearly, ESPN and ABC, while they are sister companies, aren't necessarily tied directly together the way, say, NBC and NBC Sports Network are. Because NBC started, that they birthed NBC Sports Network. ABC did not create ESPN by any stretch of the imagination. They just happen to have been purchased by the same company. But here's the deal. Brian says ESPN reaches 55 million households. ABC reaches 112 million. Yeah, no, I got the reasons. Yeah, Tim Burke is the guy at Deadspin. Thank you, Jonathan Tannenwald. I know that ABC's reach is much, much bigger than ESPN's. I understand that. But how many sports fans, and come on, like, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong about this. How many sports fans how many non-sports fans are going to say, well, I got to watch the World Cup this summer? What's the number there, percentage-wise, of the total audience? People who are not sports fans, don't like sports. I don't watch sports. No, I spend my time reading. I don't even own a television. What portion of the audience are those people? A minuscule amount, I imagine. Pure guess, but I think it's probably a very small amount of people. If you're a sports fan, you probably have ESPN, right? You probably have ESPN. If you are a sports fan, you like your sports, whether you watch Sports Center or Pardon the Interruption, or what's the one where they yell at each other? Embrace Debate Show. Those, obviously there's college basketball. There's MLS. There's NFL games. How could you not, if you're a sports fan, how could you not have ESPN? So if we draw this out, sports fans want to watch the World Cup. Sports fans have ESPN. Sports fans will be fine. David Conrad. It might be a lot more than minuscule. I'm that guy other than soccer. Cable cutter too. If you're, all right, you soccer exclusive people, I respect you. You like what you like. That's great. I'm not sure that you're a large portion of the audience. I'm really, no offense to David here. David A. Conrad on Twitter. It's not. I'm not calling you. I'm not criticizing you, David, and your choices, your life choices. They're yours. Go for it. Cut that cable. But again, I don't know that they can really dictate whether or not these games are on ABC. Now, there are games on ABC. They're just not U.S. men's national team games. But they're also earlier in the day. Remember those times, 5:30, 5:30, 11:30 a.m. Okay, on a Thursday. The games that are on ESPN, the games that are on ABC, Colombia, Greece on Saturday the 14th, 11:30 a.m. 2:30 p.m., just following that game, Uruguay and Costa Rica. Then you have Switzerland, Ecuador on Sunday at 11:30 a.m. and France, Honduras at 2:30 p.m. Think about those windows. Think about that time slot. Sunday the 22nd, Belgium, Russia, 11:30 a.m. 2:30 p.m., South Korea, Algeria. And then you get into the knockout rounds, where if the United States is able to get there, they may be on ABC. They may be on ABC. All right. So look, I've got cord cutters coming at me. A lot of cord cutters apparently. All right. There's also this thing called sports bars, where they put ESPN on a really big screen and you can buy a beer while you're sitting there watching the game. So, there are other ways around this, guys. Unless you're on house arrest, you can go out into the world, experience it with other fans. That's what I would suggest. How many? Actually, this is a good poll for us. Completely non-scientific. When the World Cup comes up in June, it's a ways away, but I imagine you're making your plans. How many of you plan to go out into the world and watch it with other fans or have a party at your house? How many of you are going to do that? Because I'd be curious, because I think a lot of the hardcore fan base are going to go out, maybe have a party. I guess we're worried about the casual fans. I guess that's who we're worried about, right? That's who's going to miss out on the U.S. men's national team. We're cord cutters and casual fans. People who might be flipping around on a Saturday, like, what am I going to watch today? What is it, June? Baseball? Oh, the World Cup's on. Let me watch some USA national team baseball. Sorry, soccer. Jonathan Tannenwald is calling. Jonathan.
Yes.
Okay. I have like 20 seconds before I got to get to Brian Sciaretta.
I'll be fast. Your people who are cable cutters might be in some trouble unless they speak Spanish.
Okay. Well, like I said, there are other alternatives. Unless you are bolted to your couch, pick yourself up, get into your car or walk. If you're
asking a lot here.
No, am I really? Am I? There's not a sports bar in every town in America. Multiple sports bars in every town in America. I'm just saying. I mean, look, what I'm trying to avoid here, Jonathan, and I think you're probably with me on this, is people getting upset about respect or some nonsense.
Number of people who I've had to tell over time that I'm not actually a cable guy. I don't come in and fix people's cable.
Right.
But your theory about the local newscast is correct.
Okay. Well, there you go. There's your reasoning. You want to get mad at your local affiliate. That's fine. Again, most people have ESPN. We rarely get soccer over there anyway. It's a bonus when we do. And I know the World Cup's a big deal, but it's not that long ago that the World Cup wasn't a big deal. We're in our fourth World Cup that is actually going to get some major push in this country, some serious oomph behind it that isn't sort of this aside, like, oh, look, here's this World Cup thing. Let's send our baseball guy out. Let's send our hockey guy out to call these games. I'm just saying. That's all I'm saying. Is that fair?
No, I think it's totally fair.
All right.
But I just, I will say this. I'll be very interested to see how many people watch that U.S.-Portugal game on Univision.
Is that
because it could run ESPN a little closer than they might want.
Okay. All right. Well, then they'll have to deal with the repercussions. That's Jonathan Tannenwald, the goalkeeper on Twitter. Go follow him. Thank you for your time. Jonathan, let's take a break because we do have to make way. Speaking of the U.S. men's national team, we'll talk to Brian Sciaretta from Yanks Abroad, New York Times, American Soccer Now, all of those things. About all of those Americans coaching and playing abroad. Don't go anywhere. Soccer Morning, North American Soccer Network, NASN.TV.
Welcome back to Soccer Morning on NASN with Jason Davis.
Joining me now on the phone, a friend of the show, excellent writer on all things Americans abroad, Mr. Brian Sciaretta. Hi, Brian.
Hey, Jason. How you doing?
I'm all right. I'm good. We were just talking about how ESPN, Disney, ABC are going to screw everyone over by only putting national team games on ESPN and not on ABC. Do you have any thoughts on that? People are upset. People want these
I don't
games.
know. It's like I used to just. I come from a time when I was just happy when they were on television.
Right, exactly.
So it's like, if I have to tune over to ESPN as opposed to ABC, it's really not a big deal for me. It's 2014. I have cable, so does everybody else. It's like I'm not worried about how other people are going to be able to watch the games. I'm just worried about whether or not I will be. And I think I think people really get into this stuff, and that's good for them. I understand some people have a job to do, but for most people out there, most sports fans out there, whether a game's on ESPN or ABC is not much of a difference.
No, it's not. It won't be for me. But I do feel for those people who have cut the cord and maybe don't have access to ESPN. But let's talk about some guys that
5 people, I think.
Let's talk about some guys that will definitely be in Brazil, some that might not, and we'll just go through these topics that have come up recently in the Yanks Abroad realm. I'm going to start with Fabian Johnson, who I think obviously is a lock for Brazil in most people's rosters. He has signed a pre-contract agreement with Monchengladbach to join them in the summer. Is this a step up? Is this a good move for Fabian Johnson?
I think it's going to really give him. I think he has some unfinished business really with making a move up. His last move up was from 1860 Munich to Wolfsburg, and Wolfsburg at the time were very good, and that did not work out. He played 16 times over the course of 2 years. Then he had to go back to Hoffenheim, a lower club to play, and now he's going back to now he's going to try to make another push up. Yes, obviously it's a big step up. He's a mature player now. I think he's a smarter player now. And, I think the question for him is where is he going to play? Is he going to be a midfielder or a left back? And my guess is that he's going to be a midfielder for Monchengladbach. And I think it's, like I said, it's a good move. I think he's a good enough player. He's warranted this. And when he's healthy, he's been a above average Bundesliga player. So he deserves to go to a top team. Now it's going to be challenging for him to see if he can do what he wasn't able to do at Wolfsburg.
Same questions as he has with the national team. Where's he going to play, midfield or left back? It'll be, as you said, it'll be interesting to see. Is there a sense of what Gladbach sees in him? I mean, is that all too early to say at this point? Right now, by the way, just to kind of give some context, and you mentioned, moving from 1860 to Wolfsburg, which is obviously a good club. Mönchengladbach in 6th at the moment, just this current season. Hoffenheim in 10th, but Hoffenheim a much more sort of it's not a flash in the pan.
Modest club.
Yeah, they're a modest club now. They came up out of nowhere and spent a bunch of money, and Gladbach a much more stable club in that regard.
Yeah, I mean, Hoffenheim's a team that by Bundesliga standards, do not have the same fan base, the same support. Mönchengladbach is one of Germany's best supported clubs. Outside of Dortmund and Bayern Munich, like they're a very popular club. At times, when Michael Bradley was with them, they were towards the bottom of the table. But historically, they're more ambitious. They have more resources, and I think it's definitely a step up in prestige and pay. And like I said, this is going to be a real. I think this is a good move for Fabian Johnson. I mean, people forget how good he was in 2009 when he was starting for Germany's U21 team that won the U21 European Championships in 2009. And I think that he's kind of on the path of. I mean, maybe he didn't accelerate as fast as he wanted to, but he's kind of resumed himself to be on the path of the player people thought he was when he was a real hotshot coming up out of 1860 Munich.
Well, I think we all hope he can push into that left back slot, not only because we might trust him a little bit more than DeMarcus Beasley, but also because that gives us a place for Landon Donovan to be on the field. And who doesn't want Landon Donovan on the field?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's going to play midfield for Mönchengladbach, but I do think in the end of the day he's going to be playing left back for the U.S. team.
Yeah. Let's stay in Germany. One of the hottest topics the last couple of weeks has been the potential choice of Julian Green. He's a very, very, very highly touted player out of the Bayern Munich system. He's been playing for the reserve team, which plays in, I think, the third division in Germany, scoring tons of goals, pretty much unstoppable. He's not big, he's not strong, he's not fast, but he's obviously got amazing soccer savvy. He's nowhere near a choice, is he?
You know, it's tough. I mean, you know, the U.S. is throwing everything at him with the kitchen sink. You know, they've been about as into him as a prospect as I've ever seen. You know, dual national recruiting kind of thing. I mean, this is, and if you were to, I mean, I've spoken with Julian twice now. You know, and family members, and you know, with these, based on these interviews, based on the feel I get from him. I mean, I think it's going to be really. I mean, I don't think Bayern Munich want him to play for the United States, not because like they're in bed with Germany so much, with the German national team. I think that they just don't want him to travel as much as he would. But I think there's no. I mean, the traveling thing is huge. But I think in the end of the day, he's going to go on loan, or he's going to get sold with an option to buy. I don't think he's going to stay for too much longer at Bayern Munich, because I think he's too good for the reserve team. He's not good enough for the first team, which is nothing to be ashamed of.
No.
You know, and I think that when he leaves Bayern Munich, there's going to be a real opening for the United States to really come in. I think in the end of the day, he will play for the United States.
Interesting.
I don't know when that'll be, but I think that, you know, he will be an American player. That's just my own guess and my own my own hunch.
Absolutely. Let's chalk that up to Brian Sciaretta's gut on Julian Green, because right now it's just unclear enough that we don't know, and until he actually shows up in a game and gets capped, it's one of those things you just can't be sure. But he is going to get. He was supposed to get an opportunity to train with the U.S. ahead of the Ukraine friendly. That game has just, as of today, been moved to Cyprus. I imagine we haven't followed up on that, Brian. But how would that impact Julian Green training with the U.S. if they end up moving that game?
Not at all. I think the U.S. is still scheduled to train in Frankfurt, and probably will go on as usual, just fly in right to Cyprus for the game.
All right.
You know, so I think that I think he's still going to be training. I mean, my guess is that nothing's changed.
Okay, I guess I wasn't aware that Frankfurt was the side of training ahead of that game. And this is a kid. You know, you've probably seen way more of him. I know you have. You've obviously spoken to him. I know you've spoken to his dad, because his dad is out there. His dad down in Florida is out there. But am I wrong in just being a little concerned that we're ahead of ourselves in terms of the hype machine? Because I remember Terrence Boyd being maybe not this level, but certainly a very exciting young prospect at Dortmund. And while Terrence Boyd is not a bad player, he's doing it in Austria now, and he doesn't have the buzz anymore.
Well, he's older. You know, there's always that to go for, and the skill set is completely different.
Sure, that's a good point.
You know, Julian can play on the outside pretty well, which is an area where the U.S. lacks options. Julian has actually even earned a professional contract with Bayern Munich. Terrence was never able to do that.
Okay,
with,
good point.
Borussia Dortmund. So there are you know, and as an 18-year-old, what was interesting about Julian, if you follow his progression up the Bayern Munich chain, is that he's never stalled. He's like, you know, Terrence was kind of a guy. He was kind of a nobody with Hertha Berlin's reserve team, and then 1 year he just started to kind of get it, but he was already in his early 20s.
Okay.
Julian has always consistently been playing up an age group. Has always been consistently scoring goals and leading his team in scoring. There's like, you know, there's not like any kind of the path has been very, you know, consistent with him, with Julian as opposed to Terrence, and that's something when you evaluate youth prospects. It's very important to see when you know, it's so tough to determine how players are doing at youth levels, because that's so far away from the first team. But what you want to see is, are they playing up an age level? Are they older than their competition? Are they consistently scoring? Are they not hitting the proverbial wall, you know, and then stagnating? Are they consistently shattering barriers and able to break through to the next level kind of seamlessly with ease? Julian's been able to do that. Now, that can't predict tomorrow,
right, but
it can predict that he's on a nice path, and then I can obviously see why Bayern Munich rate him highly, you know, and Terrence's path as a young player was always kind of, it went through peaks and valleys, you know, wild swinging, and then he did it at an older age.
Fair enough. Absolutely. That's a good case for why Julian Green is not quite Terrence Boyd. And I do see the potential there. I guess you mentioned, you know, more than likely Bayern Munich are going to sell him simply because they don't have room in their first team for him, even if he is very good. That's the best club team in the world. If that happens, are we talking about this happening in the summer and him playing as a senior player in 2014, 2015?
It's going to come down to, my guess is that, I think my hunch is that he would probably, either probably go on loan, after the summer, or, during the summer or something. Sure. I mean, a loan is certainly possible. It's just because he's not gaining anything right now with Bayern Munich's U23 team. I mean, he's scoring something like 16 goals in 18 games.
Right.
Like, he's running away with. He's one of the best players in the whole regional Liga system, which is the fourth tier of Germany. But and then the only other place to put him is on Bayern Munich's first team for the club, and that's not really an option when you see guys like Thomas Müller coming off the bench. It's very, very difficult. So it's a very they might just want to keep. They might want to release him entirely from the organization. So probably a loan looks like it's probably the next best option.
Yes,
therein lies the opportunity for the U.S. team.
Okay, we'll see what happens then with Julian Green and his club prospects. Meanwhile, the United States throwing everything, as you said, throwing everything at him. And I guess the last thing I'll say on that is what are the chances? Because people are wondering about this, and I think there is significant enough buzz behind him that some people will advocate for him to get a World Cup roster spot. How ridiculous is that at this point?
I mean, it's not science fiction. I mean, knowing that, like, if you see just how interested the U.S. team is. I mean, they're like I said, I've never seen them after a dual national. They weren't after Aaron Johansson. This intensely. Mm-hmm. And Aaron Johansson was scoring like a tremendous amount of goals at a higher level than Julian Green is right now. Just because, it comes down to whether or not where they have room for him. I mean, they might only take three forwards, and can he play the wing? And whether or not there's if a guy like Shea or Brad Davis, any kind of left-footed options. Although Julian's not, but if they don't really like what they have on the wing, they might use him. But still, you're only dealing with a guy who's played one full professional game for 3 minutes.
Right.
I don't know how interested. I mean, how that would go over in the locker room, and whether or not here you have all these guys who've been, busting their butt for a couple of years as full professionals, testing themselves. And he's in a much more challenging environment to get professional appearances. But still, it's just 3 minutes of a first team professional game. So whether or not that's going to fly with team chemistry, which is important, I don't know. But I think that's why they're bringing him into training, so they can kind of take the training wheels off and see how he fits in with a lot of the other European guys. And and see whether or not they can justify himself, at this level, at this World Cup level. But at the same point, I haven't seen the U.S. this actively after a dual national, so nothing I don't think is off the table at this point.
Fair enough. Let's move on. Let's talk about Thomas Dooley, the former U.S. national team great, German American himself, as a matter of fact, has been newly named head coach of the Philippines national team. Now, I imagine for a lot of soccer observers, that's just not a sexy thing. It's the Philippines. They're ranked below 100, somewhere in the 120s, I believe. But at the same time, every time an American coach, and Thomas Dooley, after his national team career, despite having played, grown up in Germany, played in the Bundesliga, he made his home here. He is an American. Every time an American coach gets an opportunity, it's definitely worthwhile. And this is an intriguing challenge for him.
Well, it's one of these countries where, it kind of fits into what, Dooley did with the United States. I mean, he's not just your ordinary German American. Like, the guy won the Bundesliga title. The guy, he had a very, very accomplished, European career, with Kaiserslautern, when they were very, very good. But it's, when he decided to play for the United States team, I mean, it's a fraction of what it is now. I mean, it was a real test for him to kind of be like a leader among a country that really wasn't established, didn't have, we're still have a long way to go, but at the time it was the football culture in this country was non-existent. Now, he's kind of doing the same thing in the Philippines, which is a country that, has resources, has a population, has a country that they want to succeed in the game, but they don't really have that direction. He's kind of trying to do, with the Philippines, what he did for the United States, as a player, and hats off to him. I mean, I think he's taking the road less traveled, and it kind of fits into, how the philosophy and the way he's kind of lived his soccer life. And, I think, he was always wanted to coach in MLS. But he never really got that opportunity. But if he does well with the Philippines, and maybe he can, work his way, into some kind of a gig with MLS, way down the line. But when I was talking with him last week. He seemed very happy and excited for the challenge, and like I said, he kind of sees this as an extension of the role he had with the United States. It's kind of like not just a team veteran leader, but also like kind of like a captain coach, a player coach, where he was really kind of just trying to show, on guys a little bit of a high level, experiences who didn't really have those kind of opportunities when the U.S. national team still had college players on it.
Yeah, a little bit of professionalism in the mix can often help a lot. Now, you mentioned Dooley's MLS aspirations, and I know you asked him, and he kind of moved past it, focusing on the Philippines. But is there a sense that he was actually passed over in this offseason for MLS jobs?
I don't know if it was this off season. I know he's tried consistently to try to work his way into MLS, and I didn't ask him this, but I kind of got the sense that he was a little frustrated with it. It never happened for him. I mean, here is a guy who, like I said, he worked very well with junior clubs in the California region. He was a U.S. national team assistant. He worked with Tab Ramos for the U.S. U20s. And like I said, he's a Bundesliga champion. I mean, it's kind of unbelievable that like a former U.S. national team captain and a guy with his pedigree couldn't at least get a job or at least an interest in MLS the way he did. So I guess it's just on to the next opportunity that he has. And I don't know if it was this past off season, but it sounded like this was kind of recurring, that he was not able to get his foot in the door in MLS.
Well, I mean, I guess there's a path there. Maybe he doesn't want to take the traditional path, or maybe MLS teams, I don't know why MLS teams would pass over Thomas Dooley, but hey, whatever, especially when they're hiring guys straight off the field and Pablo Mastroeni, and like nothing against Pablo, but come on. Let's move on from Thomas Dooley. Obviously wish him the best success with the Philippines. I mean, this is one of those situations where you can wholly root for the Philippines because it's not going to impact the United States at all. There's not going to be any crossover here. Let's talk about a young American player who's actually still in the United States, but may have an opportunity to go abroad. Eric Palmer-Brown. This has been another one of those sort of hot button issues the last couple of weeks. He is a 16-year-old central defender in the Sporting Kansas City system. Juventus saw him play, was intrigued, came in with an offer for him. All reports out of Kansas City, all official reports, are that they have turned down every offer. Now, Brian, you can fill in the gaps for me. I keep saying that I don't know how he can make a move until he's 18 anyway. Is that correct?
Well, yeah. I mean, he could do one of these things where he moves back and forth, and he can't play in any kind of official games. And I don't really think that's an attractive option for him or anybody. I mean, that's a tough road to do. I know Rubio Rubin and Junior Flores have done it, but I mean, I for a central defender at his age, he needs to play, and and I think it's. There's really no hurry is the way I see it, is that, I mean, if he wants to, here's a guy who could play up a cycle for the US U20s and then maybe get a U20 World Cup and it'll still only be, 17, 18 years old. And, by the time the qualifying and World Cup roll around next year, and then he can, explore his options then. I don't see any grand sense of hurry on his part to try to make this move. I mean, I think fans want it to happen, quickly. They want to see like an American go to Juventus, but at the same point, it's one of these things where he's only 16 years old, and I think he needs to get some games. He needs to play. I mean, I don't. It's great that there's interest. I heard that there's, I think there's other clubs besides Juventus also interested. And, he's a genuine, bona fide prospect. But at the same point, we're right. When he's not a dual national, can't play in any organized games in Europe, I don't really know that becomes a real attractive option until he's 18.
It's interesting. I mean, to kind of put aside the issue of Americans wanting to see a player at Juventus, like any kid at Juventus, a big name club. It's the same thing with England and Spain and Germany. We want our kids to have opportunities at the biggest clubs because that reflects well on the sport here. Putting that aside, from an MLS perspective, is it if he's that much of a prospect, if he's got that much attention, I mean, you can understand why Sporting, even if they might like the money, can say, look, we want to see what we've got in terms of a pro before we let him go, especially because, we think he's that good.
Yeah, I mean, well, it's just going to have to make them pay up a little bit more. I think they can definitely want to see what they have. But that's now becoming more costly because of the level of interest in him. And, this happens with top prospects. When you start getting big clubs interested in them, it becomes harder and harder to keep them. And when you're a league that doesn't have the resources of like some top Serie A, in English Premier League and Bundesliga teams, it becomes harder and harder to keep. I mean, he's still a young kid. His career can go either way. I think he's going to be a very good player. I've seen him play. He's very highly regarded. I think he's got a bright future. But at the same point, he's 16. It's very tough to. It's very tough to. I mean, $1 million offer for a 16-year-old kid, though, which was what's being floated out there from Juventus is very, very serious, and that shows. I mean, they're not as rich as they are. They're not going to throw those kind of numbers out there on someone that they're not fully invested in and have done their due diligence on. Yeah. I think that it's. I mean, I think it's an interesting situation. It's kind of uncharted waters.
It's there's obviously the personal element. What's best for Eric Palmer Brown? I mean, none of us can really decide for him. I'm sure when the original interest reports came up, he said, "Hey, that's very cool. I'm still young. I like being at Sporting," as you would expect any 16-year-old who's still developing his game to feel. It's just from a sporting perspective or from a wider perspective, how much of this. I mean, we're really just guessing here, Brian, but how much of this gets to be a little bit too much on Eric Palmer Brown? The attention, while he should just be going about the business of developing his game, there's going to be all this attention on him because Juventus has come in on him for $1 million.
Well, it's good. I mean, he's reached a point right now where there's no going back. I mean, like if he was to, if like Sporting and Palmer Brown were to accept Juventus's offer, he'd be going over there as like a kid who got $1 million transfer fee, without as a 16-year-old, without playing a first team game for Sporting Kansas City. Now, I mean, then all of a sudden the hype game is played up in Italy, and I know the country well. Their media is crazy. So then all of a sudden, it's the hype is either going to be here or it's going to be over there.
Right.
He's kind of reached a point where there's no way out, and I've spoken with Palmer Brown before, and he's a very mature, smart kid. Like, I like how he acts on and off the field. It doesn't look like he's going to let this go to his head. And as for whether or not this is the best option, it's uncharted waters. I mean, there haven't been that many Americans who've bypassed, I know he's in MLS, but bypassed MLS without really being like a first-team bona fide starter, or bypassed college and gotten to an older point in their lives where they can handle like moving abroad, and have done very, very well. I mean, Jonathan Spector got to Manchester United as an 18-year-old. That happened. There has been some exceptions, but like the people can say like they want these young kids to go to these academies and do well in Europe. I mean, and yeah, you can learn well. Like, I mean, the success rate is very, very low, even among European academies, about players who can make the first team somewhere. But it's tough over there, and what decision is best for him is it's a very personal decision. It's something that he has to make with him and his family. And look, you can do very well, in Europe, waiting around in MLS till you're in your early 20s and polish your game before going over. I mean, that happens. Or you can start in MLS like Josie and Michael Bradley did, and then move over still as a teenager, but as long as you get those first team professional minutes, that's always an enticing route. But to bypass, college, and I don't really like college soccer, but to bypass, everything and head over there as a teenager without much first team professional experience, it's tough. The track record's slim for success for Americans who've done that.
There are American kids who've made that move. As far as I'm aware, no one has been purchased for this kind of money. I mean, Joe Zhao goes to Hoffenheim, but I don't believe that there was this kind of money involved. It was something because he kind of sort of way station in Vancouver, if I remember correctly, before going to Hoffenheim. And not to dehumanize these kids, Brian, but it becomes a question for me of, does the value of having an American prospect at a place like Juventus, is that more important than having, to humanize them again, our best prospects in a place where there's not quite as much heat, where the attention's not quite as, whether that means staying in MLS or going to a club that's not Juventus, that's maybe, Calgary or something like that, just because of what can come with it. And as you said, no matter what academy we're talking about, Manchester United, Juventus, Borussia Dortmund, Bayern Munich, the number of kids who come out and become top-level pros is just small because they're working with volume.
Oh yeah, I mean it's exactly right. It's like look at it's like that in every sport. I mean look at AA and single A baseball. I mean how many of those guys playing in low-level minor league systems, even though they're part of organizations that are huge, to get on to like the New York Yankees. You know,
Right.
it's tough. I mean, you're dealing with Junior Flores had these kind of, was another steep investment. Earned a big contract, from for his age at Borussia Dortmund. But we're now seeing another generation of young American players, and yeah, I think that you can't paint all these American kids with one brush. I think you're going to see some kids do well starting their careers in MLS and making the move over, and you're going to see some kids like Emerson Hyman, I think, is doing very well at Fulham right now, coming up through their academy. But still, the jump from when you see kids putting up ridiculous numbers at these these European youth academies, making that jump to the first team is so hard. I think clubs are happy when they get just a handful to make that jump out of like dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of players that they have. It is tough, but it depends on the player. But something has to be said about MLS, where I think that when they have a talent that they believe in, they're not going to be as quick to cast them aside. Like sometimes, it's harsh over in Europe. I think that you're going to see kids come out of succeed in a number of different paths, and that's good for kids to have different options as to ways to start their career. There's not just one set option. They have ones where they have a couple different options they can feel comfortable with. Yeah,
absolutely. And if nothing else, this looks good for, it makes Sporting Kansas City look good. They've got this talented local kid who they've turned into a prospect at 16 years old, who is getting attention from Juventus and other clubs. So, hey, that's a win right there, whatever happens with Eric Palmer Brown. And obviously we want him to have the best chance of success.
Yeah. I mean, look, it's obviously, you have a lot of different kinds of fans in this country. You have people who obviously kind of discount MLS in favor of the European teams. You have people who overrate MLS. You have the wide ranging of opinions. But that being said, the proof is really in who scouts MLS in terms of what its value is. And when you see $1 million offer for a 16-year-old. Like, obviously, sometimes I think Juventus might think more of MLS than some fans give it credit for.
Interesting. Brian Sciaretta from Yanks Abroad. You can also find his work at American Soccer Now, where he has his Thomas Dooley interview. He's also regularly at the New York Times Gold Block. Brian, thanks for your time as always. Excellent stuff, man. Appreciate it.
All right. Thank you very much, Jason.
All right. Let's take a break. When we come back, we'll talk to David Cartlidge. We'll move on to Spain, La Liga, mixing things up at the top. Don't go anywhere. Soccer Morning, North American Soccer Network, NASN.TV.
Welcome back to Soccer Morning on NASN with Jason Davis.
Back on Soccer Morning, we turn now to Spain. Talk a little España League action and in the Champions League as well with our friend David Cartlidge. You can follow him on Twitter, David JACA. David, how are you?
I'm well, thank you, and I hope everybody listening is doing well.
So the league, would you say that the league is doing well? I don't know what that means. I'm just trying to find a transition.
Yeah, I think it was one of the most significant weekends in a while in La Liga, with Atletico Madrid and Barcelona both losing 3-1 in Barcelona's case at Real Sociedad, and Atletico Madrid 3-0 at Osasuna. So both away slip-ups there. But Real Madrid, of course, capitalised and got a win. And once again, like we discussed in the show previously, they have come up really well, got themselves together, and they are currently sitting pretty at the top.
But probably not for long. The way this season has gone, we will see musical chairs once again at some point. I guess the question here is, and I think that if it was Barcelona losing is notable, and obviously that allowed Madrid to take over the league lead. But I think most people will immediately jump to the idea that Atletico Madrid may have hit a wall, or that they're bound to kind of take a dip in form, and next thing we'll look up and they're 6 points, 7 points, 8 points back in third place.
Yeah, exactly. It appears that actually could happen, because they're having trouble, specifically away games, and it's Almeria and Osasuna now, in the space of a couple of weeks, where they've gone down, and they find it hard to compete at that extremely high intensity that the team needs to play at to be Atletico Madrid, and that Simeone requires. And Simeone admitted that after the Osasuna defeated, they simply just didn't compete, and Osasuna, the better team, won. He had nothing else to say on that, really, and Atleti have got to dust themselves off, and it's a big test of character and fatigue for them, I think.
Is the score line significant in and of itself? I mean, if they had lost 1-0 to Osasuna, that's still that's still the same impact on the table. But they lose 3-0. Is there a psychological element to that?
Yeah, I think so. Definitely, it's like I say about competing, and they just weren't there. They just weren't at the races altogether. Osasuna are a team who play in a pretty traditional manner. They're wide play, set pieces, strength, aerial duels, and they really zoned off Atleti and isolated certain players and certain little passages of play that Atleti like to put together, and really isolated their attacking play. And then from a defensive point of view, Atleti really lethargic. Usually they step out together very well, and when they need to go back in deep to defend crosses, they do it together as well. But this was just off. There was just a lack of cohesion in Osasuna. It could have been more. It could have been 4 or 5, really, because Osasuna just really hit Atleti in a weak spot.
I think that the same question will apply to Barcelona as well, as they lose away to Sociedad. As you mentioned, is there an element of Champions League hangover for either one of? I mean, you would expect Barcelona to be able to weather it better than Atletico Madrid, but is it there?
Yeah, I think they've been blessed with a pretty weak defence, quite frankly. Gerard Piqué, if he isn't on form, then Barcelona level. I think that's quite evident now. He's had enough time at the club, I think, to impress, but he comes up with the odd good performance. But other than that, he clearly isn't at the level of Alexon. So I think there's been a bit of naivety there with the market as well. People like Thiago Silva, Marquinhos have both gone to PSG. Somebody like even Benatia, who left Udinese to go to Roma. He would have been ideal for Barcelona, but they simply patched it up and used Marc Bartra, a young kid, to come in. There's just been a bit of naivety there that Barcelona really think they can get by on the current squad, and I don't think that's right. I think they need a bigger squad.
Well, it's certainly if competing on multiple fronts, that lack of defensive depth has reared its ugly head here in this weekend. But we just, before they lost to Sociedad, we come off of a game where, maybe not the same Barcelona that we were used to 3 or 4 years ago, but certainly by virtue of their defeat of Manchester City, they made a statement, and people were sort of back on the idea that, hey, you shouldn't underrate Barcelona. Look at what they can do.
Yeah, precisely. That they really needed that. Really needed to. Make a point there. I think Cesc Fabregas touched it on after. He goes, look, the critics. He didn't want to say, we shut the critics up, but he said, look, sometimes maybe we do have to have these sorts of performances just to say, look, we are human. We do sometimes slip up, but other times we can still play at this extremely high level. Now, I don't think they played at an extremely high level against Manchester City. I think they're certainly capable of offering a lot more as a team. Mm-hmm. But I think people need to realise that this Barcelona aren't aren't a spectacular Pep Guardiola beast. They're a different team. They're still learning with each game, I think, and City will. I think City can still give them a good game at the Continent.
Well, it'll certainly be interesting. I mean, like you imagine City's not going to sit back and wait for this game to come to them as they did at home at the Etihad, which was, you would say that on one hand that works to Barcelona's advantage, and we've seen them break teams down even when the opposition packs it in. And while it was strange to see a team like City with their attacking abilities do that, in the end, what you actually got, and I certainly thought this the first 20 minutes, David, is Barcelona was sort of toothless. They didn't really find a way around City, and if it wasn't for the penalty and sort of the chain reaction that stemmed from that, then maybe they don't put in that same kind of semi-dominating performance.
Yeah, definitely. They need that more direct outlet, and I think Neymar had his. I think he had his poorest game in a Barcelona shirt against Real Sociedad. You look at him, and he was a direct outlet that they bought to bring in to change them in this sense, to break down teams and to not be toothless. And they were shown up once again to be toothless. And I think with the possession situation as well, they really need to drag out more shots, more attempts on goal. They need to frighten opponents again.
Yeah.
But they need to play with the tempo as well, and it's very difficult to maintain that tempo.
It was interesting to watch because, I mean, like we're all accustomed to the way Barca plays now, and that's the triangles, that's pass first. It's always pass first. It's always if it's either one touch or two touch. It doesn't get much beyond that. And that was more, and I made a terrible analogy on Twitter about, it's like a parakeet pecking at your head. It hurts, but it really doesn't do much damage. Is the transition from Pep Guardiola to Tata Martino, how much impact has Tata Martino had on the way that they play? Is this just sort of autopilot for them and always will be until this generation of players leaves?
Oh, definitely. I think there is a sense of autopilot there from them, and sometimes they do just coast, and this is what's very, very difficult, and this is the position that Barcelona sometimes find themselves in. They do coast, and they need to just every now and then motivate themselves to go at teams and increase that level. But it just doesn't seem to be so familiar with them anymore. Pep scared out of them because Pep's, let's be honest, he's a very, very special coach, and that was a very, very special team. This is a different Barcelona now, and they have other strengths, but they maybe have more weaknesses as well. Mm-hmm. And I think it's such a big change from what Guardiola was. They have I think, and they don't have the best coach in the world anymore. So I think any team would suffer with that.
All right, let's talk about Real Madrid. They are the one team in the top three who got a victory. Now they did that at home against Elche, and Gareth Bale with one of sort of his patented screamer goals was fantastic. Are they the favorites now? Again, tight. They will probably change positions 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 more times before the end of the season. But if you're picking a favorite, is Real Madrid the favorite?
Yeah, I think they actually might be at this point. I made the point at the start of the season that their squad is considerably more stronger than Barcelona's, because of how they bought it. But they had Mendy in, and they had the young kids going through like Jesse and Morata. And I think the squad is incredibly strong. Those fathers avoided injuries as well, and they're getting performances from all around the team. I still think Madrid's got more to give as well. I think they're in a fantastic position. I still think there's a lot more potential there with that squad as the season goes on. I don't think they're peaked yet. I think they can get stronger. And I'm really liking what I'm seeing from Real Madrid at the moment. I think they're on a very, very good path as a team. And I make them firm favourites right now, most certainly. Well, and I think in the Champions League as well. Actually, I'd make them firm favourites.
Interesting. I mean, they have Schalke tomorrow in the Champions League. Meanwhile, both Atleti and Barcelona return home with leads and away goals in their pocket. You said you think City will give Barcelona a game. Do you think that Milan is in any position to give Atletico Madrid a game? I mean, you would argue, whatever that is, it's more about maybe Milan and their underwhelming nature than it is about where Atletico Madrid is right now.
Certainly. I mean, Milan were so unlucky to lose that game 1-0. I mean, nobody can deny that. Atleti, it was a smash and grab raid, basically. And Milan maybe felt that maybe part of them has felt their chance has gone, but it's still only 1-0. And Atleti have looked at times vulnerable. And maybe Seedorf can look at the performances against people like Osasuna in Almeria and where they've got Atleti. But you just know Simeone is going to be motivating again, saying, "Come on, let's not have this happen again on the biggest stage." And I think Milan will offer something. I think they can, but I think Atleti are going to really batten down the hatches on this one and really do a classic job. The job done. It won't be pretty, but it's going to be job done, I think.
And what's the baseline of success for Real Madrid in the away leg against Schalke tomorrow?
I think a solid win, a 2-0, a 3-0. You know, the expectation is that high. I think Schalke are seen as perhaps one of the weaker teams that are left, and the demands will be high with Real Madrid's squad, with Real Madrid's form. And yeah, the expectations never lower, so it always has to be the best. And I think they're capable of the best. Like, they're capable of coming away from me 2 or 3-0 easily.
You said you make Real Madrid perhaps favorites in the Champions League. I'm looking at the teams that are left. I'm not sure there's an argument for anybody except for maybe PSG, and I'm still unconvinced by PSG. 4-0 against Leverkusen is a statement, but I'm still unconvinced by PSG in a big game against a top quality opposition. And Bayern Munich rolls on, but they weren't necessarily as convincing as they can be. Is it Bayern Munich and Real Madrid? Is that the two teams we're picking out here?
Certainly, I fully concur with your view on PSG. I'm fully behind that, and I think it's Real Madrid Bayern, definitely.
Yeah. It's fascinating times in La Liga. Those of us rooting for chaos want Atleti to hold on, Atleti. But I wonder, David. We're talking about the potential tumble, and that's the easy narrative to grab onto now. But what do they need to do? What can they do? What can Simeone do to help them claw? Stay in that race for the title, or at some point, he just realizes his resources aren't good enough. I don't know where they fall and what the aspirations will be, and whether he will sell out on one front in order to have a chance at the other.
I think Simeone as a coach, he just doesn't like to lose no matter what a competition is, whether it's pre-season friendly or whether it's a Champions League semi-final. He doesn't like to lose, but I think there might need to be some perhaps realization that Atleti haven't got the squad for the team. They've got a good squad, don't get me wrong, but there's too many people not performing for me as well. There's people like Adrian and David Villa. There's 2 strikers you need on form. You need goals from them, and there's too much dependency on Diego Costa. Now, Diego Costa is a fabulous striker, and I think he can handle a lot on his own. And he'll admit that. Simeone will say that, and his teammates will say that. But there needs to be more from people like Adrian and David Villa for me. If Atleti to finish strong on all fronts, they need performances from other players, from the squad players. Because Raul Garcia can come in with no problem.
You still with me, David? All right. I may have lost David's phone line. It had a couple of rough moments there. If he happens to call, I'll leave the call up. If he happens to come back, we'll continue with David on La Liga. Just the one thing I was going to ask him, the last thing I was going to ask him before I let him go, is we spend all of this time on the top 3 teams in the league, which rightfully so. They're the best teams in Spain. But looking down the table, where are the other? And I've lost David officially. Thank you to David Cartlidge for joining us to talk La Liga. Go follow him on Twitter, David JACA. Where are the other storylines? Where's the other intrigue? I mean, down at the bottom. Valladolid, Rayo Vallecano, and Real Betis are your bottom 3. You have Malaga down there. You have Espanyol's in 10th. Okay, let's see. Sociedad is in 6th. They're the ones that just took out Barcelona on the weekend. Osasuna, who beat Atletico Madrid, is in 12th. I mean, how competitive are we talking? The drop from Atletico in 3rd on 60 points, tied with Barcelona, and Athletic Bilbao is 13 points. Is there 13 points worth of difference between these teams? I mean, we talk about yesterday when we talked to Luke Moore, we talked about the mini league at the top of the Premier League table. But the difference between that and this is that the gap is much smaller between 4th and 5th, and then 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, all the way down to the middle of the table. The gap is much, much tighter. That's a function of this one season in the Premier League, maybe. It's not always that way, but it does make for a slightly more interesting league beyond those top 3. All right, let's get. We got 15 minutes left on the show. We'll go ahead and keep up with the phone lines 347-756-6276. Here's where I go ahead and take a little bit of time to highlight the 3 people that were announced as inductees into the U.S. Soccer Hall of Fame this year. Now, remember, there is no physical U.S. Soccer Hall of Fame anymore. It wasn't Oneonta. It's no longer there. They closed the doors. Doesn't make any money. Where are we going to put it? Somebody build a stadium and put the damn Hall of Fame in your stadium. We got to figure. We need an angel investor. Well, this show needs an angel investor, but so does the U.S. Soccer Hall of Fame. Somebody step up. There's going to be a really, really rich individual. They're buying soccer clubs all the time. Step up and help out. Get the Hall of Fame back up and running. But anyway, your 3 inductees, Christine Lilly, Brian McBride, and Bob Bradley. Just a little bit of background on these people, on these worthy inductees. Christine Lilly, the thing that boggles the mind about Christine Lilly, the thing that makes her, a Hall of Famer without question, zero reservation. She has 350 plus appearances for the U.S. women's national. Think about that for a second. 350. We celebrate people. We celebrate guys who get 50 caps. We really celebrate guys and women who get 100 caps. And yes, it's easier to rack up caps in the women's game. Or it's been historically easier. They play more games internationally, and the full top level side is called up more often. But still, this is mind blowing. 352 appearances. Here's the story on her caps. She made her debut in 1987 while she was in high school. She surpassed the women's record of 151 caps held by Norway's Heidi Storr in 1998. The next year, 1999, she surpassed the men's record of 164 caps, previously held by Adnan Al-Tayani of the UAE. The records then were 151 and 164, and she finished her career with 352. And oh yeah, she scored 130 goals. And oh yeah, she was really good. That's why she's a Hall of Famer. That's why Christine Lilly goes into the U.S. Soccer Hall of Fame. Brian McBride, for U.S. men's national team fans, no argument on Brian McBride. Best target forward the United States has ever produced. Top two forwards the United States has probably ever produced. Obviously, you know about his MLS exploits and his time at Fulham and the bar, the pub there at Craven Cottage that is named after Brian McBride. He's a legend at Fulham. He's obviously a legend for the U.S. men's national team. 30 goals in a U.S. shirt. Now, it doesn't sound really impressive compared to Christine Lilly, but obviously different games, different eras, different turnover rates. Brian McBride is an exemplar U.S. soccer player in a lot of ways. A guy that was certainly a little bit ahead of his time in terms of the impact he was able to make in Europe for an American player. I've had a lot of players on that level. I've had a lot of players who at least stuck around a club for multiple seasons and became a fan favorite because of the effort and the production. I can vividly remember that goal he scored. I think it was the first game of the year when he blew up his knee. Scored the goal, went down in a heap. The Craven Cottage crowd going nuts. Brian McBride, just the warrior, the eye, the bloody eye against Mexico, the qualifier. No arguments about Brian McBride. Absolutely not. And Bob Bradley. What can you say about Bob Bradley? Trailblazer. A guy who, and I follow his brother on Twitter. Bob's not on Twitter. I don't expect Bob will ever be on Twitter. Follow his brother Jeff, who's writing for MLSsoccer.com now. He's former baseball writer, longtime soccer writer, but also a baseball writer. Worked for ESPN the magazine, if you're not aware, Jeff Bradley. Saw him say in response to Bob getting his Hall of Fame nod, that back in 1980, with all of this student debt and all of this stuff going on and trying to choose a career path, Bob Bradley said, I'm going to go coach soccer. When that was not a thing you did. Bob Bradley, Bruce Arena, that generation of guys, wasn't really a thing you did back then. Followed Bruce around a little bit, assistant at DC United. Obviously know about his college exploits as a head coach. Then he gets his shot to be a head coach in MLS with the Fire, with Chivas USA, And he was in the right place at the right time for the U.S. national team. And I think history, interestingly, has started to look back fondly on the Bob Bradley era as U.S. national team head coach. People were rough on Bob. I was rough on Bob. Ahead of the 2009 Confederations Cup, or maybe in the middle of it, after they had thrown up a stinker against Italy, and I can't really remember the way that tournament went. But at one point, early in my blogging career, I may have called for Bob to step down. I said, I don't know if he should be fired. I don't know if we've reached that level, but it's clearly not working. Bob Bradley stepped down. That was wrong. Flat wrong. Flat wrong. Now, was he, did he achieve great things? I don't know. He won the group in the World Cup. That hadn't been done since 1930 or whatever. Drew England in the World Cup. Inspired that team, helped give us the Algeria win and the goal. Should have beaten Slovenia. People question his tactics all the time. Fair enough. It comes with the territory. But give Bob some credit for his national team tenure. And again, I think history is looking kindly on his tenure. And yes, he was summarily dismissed after the Gold Cup debacle against Mexico. When he was trying to make things work, when he was trying to change things, when he was trying to interject a new attitude in the U.S. men's national team at that point. Area code 363, you're on the air.
Hey, what's up, Jason? This is Roby calling from Budapest, Hungary, actually.
That's right. You've got too many numbers in your phone number, which I should have recognized.
Yeah. yeah, exactly.
So
it's kind of a weird little situation.
What's up in Budapest? All right.
Nothing much. It's a bit warmer than it should be, actually. This global warming stuff is just not going to go away, I suppose. But I just got home from work, and I turned on the live show. I know there's only a couple minutes left, so I heard you're talking about Bob Bradley, and this kind of thought just popped into my mind. I don't know if you already discussed it and everything. I know you have on previous shows, but Jurgen getting the 4-year extension deal, right?
Yes.
This happened after the World Cup draw, so I wanted to get your input and ideas about was this just kind of covering our butts, so to speak, because we potentially could have a disastrous group stage, and so they want to kind of give him a chance and guarantee, because his is more of a long-term thing anyway, not just this World Cup, right? What are your thoughts on that?
No, I certainly think it was. Let's get this done ahead of the World Cup, because if they go three and out, which they very well could, this is a very difficult group. It's going to be more difficult to justify giving him an extension. And clearly, Sunil Gulati and the people who have helped make that decision, but this is Sunil Gulati's baby, are all on board for the long-term project that is the Jurgen Klinsmann era. Will he last those 4 years? I don't know. In fact, I would say it's probably a little bit more likely he doesn't than he does. But I get the point of signing him to an extension now if you are of the opinion that he is having a significant impact at a roots level, at a much deeper than just the senior team on this program. I think it's kind of hard to tell yet because we haven't had as much time as is needed to sort of see the fruits of that labor, but I get it.
Right. So then let me ask you this. Do you think that if we had the easiest group known to mankind, would they not have done the extension perhaps, or maybe they still would have but delayed it, or I kind of thought it was curious,
I think it would have been the same timing. And in fact, I imagine that this was Klinsmann's idea to begin with. That he said, look, I want to stick around. I'd like an extension. And U.S. Soccer, rather than saying, well, let's wait until after the World Cup, said, hey, look, we're all in. We got the draw notwithstanding, we're all in. Here you go, 4 more years. And then, he's got to prove that he's worth the money. I'm talking about Bob Bradley because Bob Bradley has been will be inducted into the U.S. Soccer Hall of Fame. So that's why I'm talking about Bob here.
Sweet. Okay. Yeah. Thanks. I had no idea. Go on.
It's so he needs in relation to what Bob Bradley was able to do, and Bruce Arena before him. Jurgen Klinsmann has to justify his salary, which is 4 or 5 times greater than what Bob Bradley and Bruce Arena were making.
Yes, I see. Okay, that's a good call as well. So it's kind of a tricky situation from both sides.
He's a symbol.
He's got demands and expectations he's got to meet.
Jurgen Klinsmann is both a a reformer, which I think is how he sees himself, but he's also a symbol. He's also, you can't, and this is no offense to Bob Bradley, because this is really unfair to him, but it's based on his provenance. You can't hire a coach like Bob Bradley, an American coach who's been toiling in college and MLS for a very long time and been good at it. You can't hire that guy and say, we're going to make him the guy who changes U.S. soccer into something more progressive and attacking and flowing and possession based and all of these things, because it just doesn't. It's not going to stick to him. He comes from an environment where it's always been 4-4-2 and a bucket, two defensive midfielders. We're going to sit back. We're going to counter, which is a viable way of playing the game. It's just that doesn't fit the ideals that U.S. soccer has decided they're going to they're going to attach themselves to. So that's why Klinsmann gets hired, partly because he knows soccer. He's a smart guy. He's coached at Bayern Munich. He's here in the U.S. He knows this country, but it's also because he's a symbol, because he indicates to not only the senior team and the people who are watching that team, but all the way down through the ranks. We're changing everything. I'm from Germany. We can make it happen.
Right. And then also, I believe that you're totally right in terms of the internally within the U.S., but then I suppose, as you were saying, he's a symbol, an icon to the rest of the world as well. Like, look, don't just write us off like you always have in the past. We do have JK on our side.
Right. There's an element of that. He validates the United States in a way that again, unfair, but he validates the United States in a way that Bob Bradley and Bruce Arena could not. So that there is something to that as well. Does that make the difference in his salary with Bob Bradley? I don't know, but there it is. There it is.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Yeah. Fair enough. No. Thanks again. I appreciate it very much. You guys are the best.
Thanks for calling from Budapest. I appreciate that a lot. The international community all up in Soccer Morning's business. I like it. I like it a lot. Keep them coming. Get some more European action on this show. We can do that. Phone number. Well, I can't give the phone number now. I got 2 minutes left. I give it now. You're going to call. I'm going to have to cut you off. We got to wrap this one up. So thank you very much to Brian Sciaretta. Fantastic conversation with him. David Cartlidge as well on Spain. Good stuff there. A couple of items just to wrap up here at the end. I didn't get a chance to talk about England working with psychologists to fix their penalty problem. I get it, okay? England has a problem with penalties. Let's talk to some sports psychologists and work out our issues, that when we go to the World Cup, we don't have penalties beating us. Fine, but you're actually making this into a much bigger issue than it needs to be. Right now, it's a joke among people, and yes, there is a history of failure. But come on, this is a psychological issue. This is they freeze up in that moment. Maybe you take the importance away from penalties, so that when English players go up and step up to take them, they're much freer about it. Don't overthink this. You go up and you kick the ball hard into one of the corners. That's what you do. If you do it right, it doesn't matter if the goalkeeper guesses correctly. Doesn't matter. Fantastic stuff. All right. So that's going to do it for today's show. Show at soccermorning.com. Soccer Morning on Twitter. DavisJSN on Twitter. What else? NASN.TV. iTunes. Places to find the show. YouTube/NASN TV. And yeah, that's it. It's a good one, right? 90 minutes. Soccer Morning. We'll be back tomorrow, Wednesday. I'll talk to you guys then. Bye.